guys. So advanced objection handling, welcome. Thank you for joining with me this morning. I'm glad that I didn't show up here alone. I still would have done it because I know a lot of people catch on to things on the replay, but it's a lot better to be able to train and coach when you're actually having participants. So I am going to share, where am I at here? Advanced objection handling, right there. Okay, you guys should see advanced objection handling on the screen. Now we went over a few. I want to finish out the objection handlers that we're working on this week. And first, like always, we go over the fundamentals. I look at the fundamentals, again, I came up in the martial arts. So in the martial arts, they stress fundamentals. In any sport, in anything, they stress the fundamentals. Now, these are my fundamentals. These are things that I actually deem as important. I will add to them as I come across things, because a lot of times I'll be coaching and I'll be training and I'll have an aha moment about something that I feel is important, that I feel is just normal for me, and then I'll write it down. But as of right now, number one is you can make up in skill where you're lacking numbers. That's what this whole group is about. This is what the role playing is about. This is why I created the role playing, because there's a lack of a gym, there's a lack of a dojo where people can actually practice. So when you get better, you don't have to work so dang hard. Or you can just continue to work hard and be better and just do more business. I mean, you choose whatever you want to do with your life. The person who asks the questions controls the conversation. I think that we all know this. This is something that's natural with you guys when you guys are having conversations with your friends, with your relatives, but for whatever reason, maybe a fear factor, people contract and they go into a mode of selling and not, or telling, which is not selling, right? It's asking questions, because you can't change a person's perception or belief. Only they can. And the only way that they can do it is by internalizing and actually answering these questions. Big thing that I preach here locally, and I preach this to everybody, is that you don't have a lead until you have a why and a when. So every question that you ask, your mission, your business mission in life, when you're talking to a prospect, before you do anything, before you set an appointment, before you go on an appointment, you need to find out what their why and when is. Okay, now, there is a caveat to that. If you're working for buyers, I believe that you should, if someone calls you up and it's a cold outreach call, you don't have that rapport with them, they want to see a house, they came off one of your internet leads, go show them a house. Because going and showing them a house gets you that face-to-face interaction. And you have a closed audience. So go and show them a house. Just don't show them another 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 houses until you've actually had a buyer orientation with them. You've outlined what your business expectations are, how you work, and that they sign a buyer's agreement. Because there's nothing worse than having a buyer and showing them houses than not having a listing agreement. And you know that I know that you know, if you've been in the business for a while, it's happened to you where you've shown a dozen or 2 dozen homes and then they bought it from their cousin. So let's try not to do that. And then last, but certainly not least, if you ever come to a point where you are just flabbergasted at what they had just said, just repeat what they said in the form of a question. A natural response to that is that they will give you more information. So we went over the fundamentals. Now we're going to go over the objections that we have. So this is, I think, Wednesday's commission is, what commission rate do you charge? Look, guys, you guys are professionals. The difference between a professional and amateur is that a professional gets paid. Now, the CRMLS, which for those of you who are in California, you're familiar with it, but for those of you that aren't, it's the regional MLS in Southern California. In fact, it's the largest MLS on planet Earth because it's only in the United States. Now, I get the data every single month, and I can see who has closed a transaction in the last 12 months and in the last 24 months. And every month, I look at the zeros on the MLS, and I have to eliminate half the MLS because they haven't closed a transaction in the last 12 months. Now, I would say that if they closed transactions in the past 24 months, they were professionals back then because they were people who got paid. If you have not closed a transaction, and I don't mean this to be rude or condescending, it's just the way that I look at things. If you haven't closed a transaction in the last 12 months, you went from a professional status to an amateur status because professionals get paid. And if you're a professional, you need to know the rate that you charge. Okay. If you guys want to test my theory, I want you to call the most experienced attorney in your marketplace and ask him what their rate is. They're going to tell you what that rate is, and it's going to be a high dollar mark. It could be $500-$600 an hour. Then you can actually call a new attorney who just got out of bar school. You know, they have the baby, or not bar school, you know, not mixing drinks, just passed the bar exam. And, you know, they still have the baby face. They still look awkward in a suit. And ask them what the rate they charge. And they're going to say it's negotiable, right? Or it's like, you know, it kind of depends on what you want me to do. You know, so a professional with experience who's defined on their value proposition knows the value of their service, and they can sell their service. And the inexperienced one, the one who's not sure about themselves, the one who is maybe more trying to go after deals that doesn't have a big pipeline, they're more willing to do the cheap. And you know what? We've all lost out to fees. You know, there's a lot of flat fee companies in what I do. We lose out based on commission because a lot of people aren't looking at profit margin. They're only looking at cost. And when you lose out to somebody because of the commission that they charge, number one, it could be is that you did not convey strong enough the differences between your value proposition and the other person's value proposition. So that's on you. That's where practice comes in. That's where you have to practice your listing presentation, practice the way that you deliver it. Or number two, they might just weigh more heavily on cost, right? There are people, a lot of people shop at Walmart, but there's also a lot of people that shop at Whole Foods, right? So you just got to really kind of put your stake in the ground and decide on who you're going to work with and stand firm to the value that you provide. But going back to this objection, what commission rate do you charge? I don't believe that you do this in a bulk amount, right? I don't believe that you should say it's 6% and then you should go down and break that in. Now, the national average for the United States is 5%, 2.5 each side typically, right? When I'm guesstimating or when I'm evaluating, and this is what happened when I worked for Realogy, we would look at a company's production, we would time it up by 2.5, and that would give us a fairly accurate picture of their gross commission income, right? I do the same thing with real estate agents. But when it goes to the commission rate that you charge, 5% is the national average. So if you're charging 5% total, you're in line with the national average, and you can use that in your talk track. And I'll show you how in a second. But here's the thing. If you're going on a listing presentation, or actually let me back up. If you're having a buyer orientation, and somebody asks you what you charge, you're not saying 6%, right? Most places you have to write in the amount that you charge for buyer orientation, or excuse me, buyer representation. And typically that's going to be a 3, right? So if you do that for a buyer, why don't you do that for a seller? Why don't you separate the fees? Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that's a really great question. The fees that I charge for listing services based on the experience that I provide, the market knowledge I have, and you know, X, Y, and Z, is I charge 3%. That's for the listing side. But through this presentation, one of the things that we have to talk about is as we market your property and another agent brings in a buyer, what is the percentage that you're willing to actually pay for the buyer, right? So this isn't really necessarily an objection because nobody can determine the value of your service without having the cost component to it. Right? If you just tell them everything that you do and there's no price to it, look, we're not a fine restaurant here, right? You know, you go into it and there's no prices to it. And the thing is that if you're asking for what the cost is or what the price is, you can't afford it. Probably so, right? You're probably going to pay like $300 for a steak. But the way that you determine value is what somebody gets divided by what they pay equals value. I just did a training on this. Now, if you imagine everything that you get for what you charge, so let's say that you get, for $1,000, you're going to give $1,000 of services. That's a 1 times. 1,000 divided by 1,000 is 1. Now, what if you get $10,000, you pay $1,000 and you get 10,000 of perceived services, right? 10,000 divided by 1,000 is 10 times. So it's 10 times the value. So the only way that you can adjust value is by adding what somebody gets, the perceived value, or decreasing the price. So the reason why I say that if you're you have to practice your listing presentation, the way that you pitch your value. You need to focus on your personal brand. Now, your personal brand should be in alignment with the brand of your company. It's both. It's a package deal, right? And so you need to sell your perceived value. And if the seller looks at that perceived value as no different than the other agents that they're talking to, then the only thing you can compete on is cost, right? Lowering the commission. So you just need to make sure that, hey, this is what I do. I have 20 years of experience. I've sold over 1,000 homes. I get you professional photography. We're going to do this. 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 And for that, you know, you don't pay anything up front. It's just that when I sell the property, this is how much I'm going to get paid, as opposed to every other person who's going to compete on price. If you're competing on price, you're a commodity. You're going to go, and the seller is going to be like any commodity, you know, like, let's talk a gallon of milk. If you're getting the same gallon of milk, one place you get it for $1, the other place you get it for $5, and it's the same brand, it's the same thing, it's the perceived value is the same, a normal person will gravitate to the price, right? Because it's more value. But if you buy a gallon of milk and it comes with a six-pack of Coke and a thing of bread and, you know, a bunch of other things with it, now you're changing the value of it. So when someone asks you what the commission rate you charge, say it with confidence, say it with clarity, say it like you mean it, say it like you own it and that's the value that you are worth, and then see what objections come up. Because this is just kind of an opening statement. And quite honestly, you should be addressing this question both in your pre-listing packet and in your presentation, because a good presentation will answer all the common objections that you have, right? And I'm going to start doing more training on that. If we have time, I'll share with you guys kind of what my plans are. So that's it. So what commission rate you charge, Mr. and Ms. Seller? It's a really great question. The listing fee that I charge for my services is 2.5%, which is in line with the national average. But we do need to talk about what kind of commission you would be willing to pay a buyer's agent if, in fact, they bring a buyer, right? And then open up the conversation. Anyone have any questions on that? Awesome. Let's keep moving. Time check, 8:47. Good. Next objection. Other agents lower their commission, why not you? You know, interestingly, and I didn't think about the order that I put these in, but after you answer that previous question, you could get this objection, right? Now, don't go on the defense, right? You don't know what other agents are doing. The only thing that you're in control of is what the services that you provide. You're only in control of what your value is. When I talk with real estate agents, I don't care what their compensation plan is at their current brokerage. It has zero to do with me. I'm not competing on price, right? I'm competing on value, right? But other agents lower their commissions. Why not you? You know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that's a really great question. I'm not entirely sure of the agents that you're talking to, but if you don't mind me asking, right, softener, if you don't mind me asking, what is it the other agents are providing? And my second question is, how much are they charging you for those services? Find out what they're getting, right? Don't go in on the defense. Never go in on the defense. You're going to lose, right? Because they have a belief system here. A seller has a belief system that commissions are negotiable, and they are negotiable. But they have a belief system. They're talking to other agents. They think that all agents are created equal. You need to make sure that you're not a commodity, that you're not looped into it. And you need to really focus on your own personal brand and the things that come with your personal brand, right? So other agents are lowering their commission. Why not you? Well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that's a really great question. If you don't mind me asking, you know, I don't know who you're speaking with or who you have spoken to, but can you share with me what is it that they're providing to you, and at what fee are they providing? Well, they're going to put it on the MLS. They're going to make sure it gets on 300 other websites. They have a lockbox. They have their license. You know, and then ask other questions. Okay, those are really great. So you get it on the MLS. That's perfect. They have their license. That's great. Do you know how long they've been licensed for? Well, they've been licensed for, I don't know, 3 years. 3 years. Wow. Okay, so they can't imagine that the average agent selling many houses. Do you know how many homes they've sold? No, I don't know how many homes they've sold. Okay. Do you know how much business they do in your immediate area? No, I don't. Okay. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, as you saw in my packet of information, did you see how long I've been in the business? Yeah, you've been in the business for over 20 years. Yeah, over 20 years. You know how many homes I've sold in that time? I've sold over 1,000 homes. So do you feel that my experience, my market knowledge, my ability to perform the proof in my track record, do you think that's a fair comparison to another agent who's only been in the business for 3 years? Well, no, that's not. Yeah, so really, this is just like if you were going to hire an attorney. Okay, so this is what I'm doing here, guys. They don't know real estate. I want to take their mind into something similar that they are familiar with. Most people, because of television shows and because of just society and culture, they understand that really experienced, awesome attorneys get paid a whole lot of money and really bad ones don't, right? So I'm going to change their frame and I'm going to put that parallel with what we're doing. So this is no different than if you were going to go hire an attorney, and let's say that you're facing some serious crime, whether you're innocent or guilty is irrelevant. Are you going to want to hire the attorney that has the most experience, that has the best track record? There's no guarantees here, but they have the best track record of helping you get what you want in the time you want? Or are you going to gamble your freedom on somebody who just got their license to practice law just because they're cheaper? Which one are you going to choose? Well, guys, the normal person's going to choose with the most experience, the one that they can afford, right? It's your job as a salesperson to share your value with them, to share what the differentiation is, right? If all they're doing is meeting with you and you're just offering the same services as every single other real estate agent, you're going to start competing on price, right? And that's fine, right? The person, and I also want you guys to know something, this might be in the fundamentals, is that the person who's willing to walk away from a negotiation is always going to win. Dig your heels in the sand, man. Just stand your ground, right? Know your value. Now, your value is going to be worth less if you only have one deal and you're going to try and get that one listing appointment and you're only working at one at a time, right? That's why we talk about lead generation. Lead generation should be focusing on 80% of your day. If you're doing more in your business, if you're doing in real estate more than 20%, we need to start talking about increasing your organization to find out how we're going to get you 80% of your time in lead generation. That's your job. Real estate is what you sell. Real estate services is what you sell, but you guys are a sales professional, and sales professionals who don't go hungry spend 80% of their time in lead generation activities. Okay, so other agents want to lower their commission. Okay, why not you? Well, if we want to just do a very direct rebuttal, well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I think that's great that other agents are lowering their commission, and you're questioning why not me. Well, it's the fact that I've been in the business for over 10 years. I've sold over 500 properties within a 5-mile radius of years. I have a track record of helping sellers sell their home for the most money in the quickest amount of time. I don't know what other agents are doing. Would you mind sharing some of that information with me? Right? It's a conversation, right? Same kind of conversation that you would have with someone that you know. Okay, so that's that. Let's go on to the next one. I want to list at a higher price. Okay, guys, the most common rebuttal for this, do a level shift, okay? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I totally get that you want to list at a higher price so that you can net the most money for your home. Am I right? Okay, you went from, I want to list at a higher price to now them wanting to net the highest price for the home, right? Almost the same thing, right? In their mind, that's the same thing, but you've actually level shifted it into it. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, why do you want to list at a higher price? You cannot rebuttal, you cannot respond to this question in its current format, right? I want to list 20,000 higher than what the comps are. That's really what they're saying, right? Why? Why do you want to do that? Well, because my house has a pool. Well, because this and that and the other. Well, because of this, that, and the other. Okay, so you feel that based on your perception that the value of your home is X amount over every other home because of this, that, and the other. Am I understanding you correctly? Yes. Okay, so I have a question for you. Please don't get mad at me, right? When you do something like that as a softener, please don't get mad at me. They're giving you permission because subconsciously they're getting ready for something a little bit more direct. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, do you think that a buyer is going to buy your house based on the value that you think it's worth or based on the value that they think it's worth? Well, I think that, if you were going to buy something, are you going to buy a car because the salesman thinks it's worth this much or because you think it's worth this much? Well, I'm going to make my offer based off of what I think it's worth. Absolutely. So you believe that this, and this equals X amount of dollars more than any other house, right? Yes. Okay, so any buyer that comes out and looks at this, what if they don't agree with you? What if they don't think that there's any value in that? Or that nice pool that you have, what if they have the intention of spending $5,000 to have it backfilled in because they don't want it? They like everything else about your house, but not the pool. What's the value in the eyes of the buyer? Well, it wouldn't be worth that much. No, it wouldn't be worth that much, right? So guys, you can't just rebuttal a question like this. This is going to come down to your listing presentation. It's going to come down to the way that you price properties, the way that you go through your comparative market analysis, and you're going to do that through questionings. Remember, telling's not selling. You can't tell them what it's worth. You can have an idea of the value of the price in your head, and you can share that with them, but you have to ask them questions backed up by what's going on in the market so they can come to their own conclusions. Now, this is also going to go back to their why. Why are they selling? Because if they're overpriced, they might not have very high motivation. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I get it. If you don't mind me asking, why are you selling this home again? Well, do you absolutely need to sell this home? Well, no. Well, what's going to happen if you don't sell this home? Well, we're going to die in it. Okay. That would have been great for you guys to figure that out through the pre-qualification before you sat down in front of them, right? If someone either is going to get their price or they're going to die in it, you might as well start planning going to their funeral in however long, right? Because you and I both know they're never going to sell it. And when you go for a price reduction, they're going to remind you that they said, well, if I don't sell this house, I'm going to die in it. Okay. Now you've wasted your time, right? Now, I would never say that. You've wasted their time, but more importantly, you wasted your time because time is probably the most valuable commodity that you have. 8:57, guys. I don't have time to go through another one because I always like to start on time. I like to finish on time. I do want to give you guys a few minutes to kind of unmute yourself and ask any questions. Anyone?
Me.
Morning, Cecilia.
Good morning. How are you?
I got my coffee, so things are looking up.
Okay. I have a client that is thinking about selling their condo at it's almost the same price at which he bought, and he's wanting to sell because he wants to do like a rental in the next 1 to 2 years and then buy another condo at a cheaper price. But then how can I persuade him to do it? Because he says, well, if I'm not going to make any money and I'm going to sell almost even, what's the advantage?
That's a great question. What is his why? Why does he want to sell again? So he wants to turn it into a rental?
Because
so he wants to be like a little mogul, a little real estate mogul through condos?
He's a very savvy businessman, and he bought 2 condos from me. I sell him 2 condos in the same area,
okay.
But the other was a short sale, and he made more money. So he's thinking, well, I'm not spending, this is where I live, but he also lives in Mexico City. I'm not coming that often here, so I better.
Okay, so let's stop right there. Sorry to interrupt you. This is where you need to go down into it because he's talking about money. He's talking about net. Mm-hmm. This is the conversation that you need to have is what's going on in the market. There's 100% probability that you're going to sell this condo for the highest price in recorded history or the 50-50 gamble, right? This is that conversation that you need to have. Mr. Seller, do you know what's going on in the market right now? Well, here's what's going on. Let me share with you. There is an attack on jobs, wages, and income, which is downward pressure by itself on prices. Interest rates are all-time low. The Federal Reserve is printing funny money to pay for unemployment. They're paying for mortgage-backed securities. They're paying for corporate bonds. They're paying for people out of work. They're paying for this. They're paying for that. They're paying for this, and they're keeping interest rates low. Mr. Seller, what do you think is going to happen when interest rates go up? Do you think that the price is going to come down, or do you think that the prices are going to go up? Well, I think if he's a savvy business person, he understands that when prices are at historic lows, prices are at historic highs, and it's a teeter-totter. So when rates go up, prices come down. So there's a 50-50 gamble that things are going to be all sunshine and rainbows. But as you start seeing all these evictions that are starting to opening up, thawing out, and you start seeing these forbearance and these deferment programs coming out, and foreclosures are going to start happening, I think that is seriously a gamble, right? I think it's more like a 75% gamble that we're probably going to see the market adjust and start going down, and a 25% that things are going to be sunshine and rainbows. So you need to have that conversation with them, because if he's a savvy businessman, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's savvy on what's going on in the market. Otherwise, he would probably be in real estate, right? So I would say that you need to have that conversation with him and say, look, what would happen if you don't sell this? Well, I'm going to keep it. Are you aware that home prices are the highest that they've ever been in recorded time? Yes, I am. Okay, so what would you do if the market were to shift and prices started to really significantly decline? What would you do then? Well, do you think that could happen? Well, that's really a great question, right? There's some really, really smart people on one side that says, no, it's going to be sunshine and rainbows. But there's going to be really, really smart people on the other side that says, you know what? Buckle your seatbelt, it's going to be a ride. Now, there's a 50-50 gamble. One of them are going to be wrong. So there's a 50-50 gamble on your part that you're either going to probably net the same amount of money that you're going to do now down the road, or you're going to start chasing the market down. Which one's better for you, right? You need to have that conversation with them. Probably not the way that I would, because I'm kind of, my personality is a little bit different, but that's it. Thanks for showing up. We'll be here again next Tuesday.